The Podcasting Morning Show is your morning meetup where podcasting meets purpose and creativity, sparking connection. Hosted by Mark Ronick, with 2 decades of experience and elevated by a team comprised of award-winning podcasters, accomplished entrepreneurs and producers, and podcast hosts with years of experience. Together, they form the backbone of the Podcasting Morning Chat, diving into the nuts and bolts of content creation, sharing real-life challenges, solutions, and success stories. Streaming live every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from Clubhouse, yes, Clubhouse, and available as a podcast just a couple of hours later, the show has evolved into a go-to resource for content creators worldwide. Imagine a mastermind group's collaborative spirit combined with the engaging vibe of a morning drive radio show. That's what we're all about. Learn more at www.podcastingmorningshow.com.
Paula Sima didn't start Talk Shit with P to build an audience. She started it because she needed a place to put what she was carrying: depression, isolation, and a life lived mostly alone across 3 continents and 6 countries. What happened next is the thing nobody in the podcasting industry talks about honestly. The show found her community before it found its strategy. Over 5 years, 10 seasons, and 219 episodes, Paula built one of the most genuine spaces in independent podcasting. A room where creatives talk about the mental health cost of building, not just the highlight reel. In this conversation, she goes into what it actually means to turn personal healing into a movement. Why her non-negotiable is a release form that every guest signs, dad included, and what she learned about building systems around community and consistency instead of content output. This is what podcasting actually does when you start it for the right reasons. Let's get this conversation started. Thank you for doing this. I do appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me. I love that yours is talking shit with people conversation. Paul, they need multiple perspectives other than those who are, at the top. And it's not the case. It's not true. You can do it anyway.
I want to give the creatives their flowers and learn about their journeys, because sometimes we just look at somebody's success, but we forget that where we are right now, they were there once, or they probably still are, because success looks different in everybody's eyes from outside. You just think like, oh my God, I want to be there, but you don't know the back ends they have to go through at the back. So I bring people on my show so they can share their journey, so that somebody who's sitting there thinking like, oh my God, I want to be like them. But then when they hear their story, they're like, oh, I can actually be like them because they went through all this and I'm going through that and they still made it, and look at them. So yeah.
That's the beautiful part. Okay. We're going to start with the first question. Okay. This is the first question that I asked every single person that I've had on. So it's the same. Why should you do a podcast?
Because whatever you have to share matters and somebody out there needs to hear it. There was a time a lot of people, even one time I thought about it, because when I started my podcast, people were still getting into podcasts. So it felt nice saying, I'm a podcaster, and people are looking at you like, but now there's also this argument like, too many podcasts out there, like we don't need any more podcasts. But then it's the same thing as movies and music. Are you telling people to stop making music because there's too much music out there? Are you telling people to stop writing books because there are too many books out there? Are you telling movies, shows? Yes, they might be the same thing, but it's a different person's journey. It's a different person's stories. They're not the same stories. They didn't go through the same shit. They might have similarities, but my voice, some people might want to listen to me because I talk so much shit, but I'm saying the same thing somebody else is saying, but they don't listen to their language, or they don't feel like they can relate to that person because of how they grew up or where they stay. So whatever you need to share matters, and people need to hear it. So start a damn podcast.
No matter how many times it's been said, like you said, with the thing about music, I love using that analogy, is just because every note's been played doesn't mean you can't go back and put it in your specific style, in your creative tone. This is what podcasting is. Every word's probably been said in the alphabet, in the language, but still here we are. And it's how you construct and put those things together. So what was the genesis of saying, okay, I have the idea of starting my podcast. Now, where did you come up with the idea of talking shit with P? And what was the first thing that someone said when you said, this is what my podcast is and what it's going to be about?
Actually, every time I say this is what my podcast is, people are like, oh my God, I want to talk shit with you. So that made me happy. I mean, when you have a podcast called Talk Shit with P, who wouldn't want to talk shit, right? It's so light-hearted and people are like, yeah, I talk shit because everybody believes they talk shit and we all do, right?
Right.
But I wanted to start my podcast because COVID, depression, breakup. I was dealing with all those things, and I'm a person who lives in a fast-paced world. Like, I like to be busy, and then I like to be on the go. I like to do something, and I love to drink as well. But when I start seeing that I'm drinking to drown instead of enjoy, that becomes a problem. My depression was doing too much during COVID, and everything that I had pushed down, I had to face. And I was like, you know what? I want a safe space. And at that time, I did have amazing friends and family. But when it's COVID, the entire world is dealing with something, right? It's not just a part of the world. So going to people, asking them for help when they also have kids at home and they are taking care of their parents and whatever, it felt like a burden. So I wanted to start a safe space for myself. And one time I was drinking too much, and back when X was Twitter, and I went on Twitter and started talking shit, and somebody was like, you should start a podcast. And the next thing I did was start a damn podcast. And the first episode was probably my rawest, most honest episode. And I didn't even edit it. I recorded and I published, and I've never listened to it. But and it's funny because hitting the publish was the hardest thing for me, because now I'm letting the world out there know it's out there and they're going to listen. And then there's that fear, are they going to judge me or whatever? But the response I got, I realized a lot of people wanted a safe space, and then we continue. So yeah.
This is what it's supposed to be. Let me start with what comes to my heart and what comes to my mind. I like your approach because it's something that can almost happen naturally. It's something that doesn't have to be drawn out. It's second nature. I don't have to think about it as far as structuring out a whole script, doing a whole outline. When you sat down and recorded that first episode, Paula, what were your expectations afterwards as far as like, I'm going to do this again? I don't know, or this is going to be just me talking for one time and recording it. Like, what was the next step after doing it and saying, was that fun? Or was this like, I don't know what I'm doing. Should I even try this again?
It's funny because when I decided to do this podcast, right, I told my younger brother, who's my best friend, because anytime I tell him something, he holds me accountable. And whenever I'm serious about something, I tell him. When he gave me, he asked me, so when are we publishing it? And I gave him a date. So in my mind, I was working towards that date. And I did everything that us procrastinators do. I created an office space in my area. I ordered the Amazon mic that I didn't even use. Shout out to when it was
into that.
I know, and then I created this entire synergy of my office, and shout out to COVID University, because if you remember when it was COVID, everybody, there were all these courses available. As soon as you start Googling podcasts, your entire algorithm is, there's this course for whatever. Yes. So I did take one course, which I loved that because she was so simple and like, listen, all you need is this. The rest is just in the future. Right now, this is all you need. So she's the one who I ended up being able to direct myself to where to go. And when I was recording that episode, I felt so relieved. And then I realized also I like to talk, like when I right. When I was talking. But it was also like sharing all that out that was holding deep inside and just letting it go. Because at that time, I wasn't sure if I was going to publish it or whatever. Like, I was just talking to my phone on Anchor. Shout out to Anchor before it became Spotify. And then I was just talking and I felt so good, so relaxed, like I let it out. So once I published it, I literally switched off my phone because like I sent it out to a few friends, like my family, a few friends before I really announced it on Facebook. There were specific people who got it because I wanted their feedback, including my brother, who is not shy in being so honest. Like, I love you, but you're messing up. Oh, I love you, but good for you. So even though I wanted to hear their feedback, I was so scared. I switched off my phone. But I was also telling myself, like, if I felt that good, does it matter what they tell me? So I had to sit with that question with myself, like, the way I felt talking in there, but I was more scared about when it came to my dad and my brother, like, I am sharing so much personal stuff about myself. And me, being an African, and especially the tribe I come from, where we don't share these things, we don't talk about mental health, we don't talk about therapy and all this, and I'm here trying to let the entire world know that I am a mess, I am depressed, I am broke, and I am childless and not married, and all these things. That was that was the pressure, especially when everybody has this idea that at a certain age, you're supposed to be married with kids and you should have savings and you should have this kind of job. But when I turned on my phone, I cried because a lot of people, the people I shared it with, were telling me how brave I am to being this honest. People they started checking in. They started sharing their own struggles. I was like, fuck it. I didn't even wait for the original date that I had planned to release it. I just went and released it. And from there on, I was like, okay, so we're going to talk about mental health. I need to bring people who I know are going to dig into that. And I need to share more stories about me in that. And I just went into, what episode are we giving next week? How are we naming this episode? Like, the excitement just overflowed. So I think sometimes, no wonder it makes sense. Like, I watch a lot of trash TV when I see Love is Blind or whatever, when people are so nervous, how their family will react. I understand that because I remember I was more scared of that. Like, I knew it wouldn't matter. I was still going to do it. But also one part of me was like, what if they don't support or like it or be like, you're doing too much, because I'm known for doing too much.
But that's the part about taking that leap and being brave enough to do it. I needed an outlet. I needed somewhere to express. I started doing it. I got so good at it, and I was having so much fun doing it. I actually inspired my own brothers to start their own podcast because they were like, it looks like you're having fun. There's a power in being able to share what it is about you and the people that you bring on and the conversations that you have that matter. They're going to find the right people that need to hear that story at the right moment. And that's the beautiful about what we get to do as creators as podcasters, is that we get to share that out there.
Exactly.
We don't always get to see the full impact of what we create and what goes out there. So I want to touch on something that you said, because it's one of the questions that I actually had. So what piece of gear that you mentioned, shout out to Amazon, that you obsessed over that actually didn't matter, and what actually does for somebody starting a show?
So here's the thing, right? Because I didn't know anything about podcasting or what to do, so I just Googled podcasting mics, and I think I found one for, I think it was $40. It came with a stand. I didn't even know how to click the stand off. So the stress of putting it together, they had the mic over there, and I was like, oh, I can record on my phone on Anchor, and it sounds so good. So I missed the Anchor app. Like, it used to help me do a lot of things. That's why I tell people, and to me it was like, I also didn't want to invest too much or go deep in gear, because I was like, will I still like doing this when the world opens up? Because mind you, this was during COVID. We had all the time in the world. But once we start going back to work, and I used to work in retail, my schedule was never the same. Like, will I still be putting it on, or will I put it on hold? So my thing was, I'm not investing on anything until I know I want to keep doing this. But a lot of people talk about, oh, I have to get that $200 mic. Oh, I need to get this. You really don't. Like, there's so many ways to make your sound clear or work better. For me, at the end of the day, it's your message and your sound clear. Everything else can be figured out and budgeted as you keep growing. You don't need everything right now. All these gadgets, just say you're procrastinating or you just want fancy shit and then you don't have shit to talk about, or like you're just not doing it. And I feel like some of the people ended up building studios because of that, and then they're renting their studios and all, because they end up concentrating on, oh, it has to be this. And especially now it has been worse with video. Because when we had audios, the biggest things were mics and headphones. Now it's like camera. The studio needs to look good. Now I gotta shop for my makeup because my makeup gotta look on point. I gotta make sure I have the nice glasses. Right. But I also feel like people just look for excuses to not to do it. Because if you wanna make it work, you figure it out. There's so many people. I mean, there was that guy who used to have an incredible podcast and he would record while going to work on his phone, on the traffic, on the way to work. And I loved it because it felt like you were heading to work with him because you could hear the honks and so there's so many ways of making your podcast like without the extraness of all this shit that we keep lying to ourselves. There are always going to be newer mics and newer headphones and newer cameras. Just like the iPhone, you know how you constantly keep upgrading?
Yes.
And you're like it's going to be the same with us. So I rather you wait and see how your show is doing, what you want to do with your show. Then make a plan on, like even me when you go listen to my first episodes and until now, like I didn't have an actual properly made intro and outro until season 3 or 4. Like once I knew, like every season as I kept on going, I kept on updating one thing and changing, especially because, you know, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, like everything you're doing yourself. I don't have big sponsors. I don't have hi-hat backing me up or anybody. Everything is coming out. And most of us podcasters, everything is coming out of our pockets. Half of us, either we are trying to make this a full-time, but we still have to have a full-time. There's still bills to be paid and everything else. So
this is why this is aimed at new podcasters. This is 8 years of acclimating over and doing time again in the garage in the camera.
Listen, I still use those. They still work.
Yeah, they still work. People use them all the time. I've seen some high-end creators who still use them because they're easy. They actually work. They have a better flow for some people. There you go.
There's this guy called Chris Krimisos, the owner of Podfest. He once wrote a book called Start Ugly, and I suggest every new podcaster to go read that because, believe it or not, his wife, Kate Krimisos, does a meditation podcast, and she has an entire network. I believe last year, or was it the year before, she reached almost 100,000 million downloads, and she went on tour on TV in Florida and whatever. And when you look at her recording, when she's recording a meditation, she still records in a closet, you know, with because you know the closet gives you.
Right.
And when sometimes she's doing lives, her laptop, you see boxes and books. And then her laptop, like she has no stand or whatever, like not that she can't afford it, but sometimes those things are unnecessary. If the box and the books piled up, they still give me the hype. Why not? Like, so if these are people who are making those downloads and have been able to achieve, and they're still using no more shit, I don't know. Stop playing and start that podcast.
That's right, girl. Hey, okay. So you mentioned something too that I want to hit on for again, new podcasters. And that's the process of growing. You said when I first started, I didn't have an intro. I didn't have an outro. I didn't have any of that. It took me to like season 3 or 4 to decided to start doing it. And it was a process. So what kind of process have you seen for not only yourself, but then new podcasters who want to get started, who say, I don't know what any of this is. I didn't know none of these editing tools. I didn't know where to publish. I didn't know like where to even start after I hit record and hit stop. What was that next step for you? And then how did you eventually start putting together your workflow now that you use to be able to record and publish on a regular, consistent basis?
So first of all, I thought a trailer was what was required because when you join Buzzsprout in order to get yourself everywhere, you needed a trailer. I was like, I have a trailer. What's an intro and outro? I didn't even think about an intro and outro, to be honest. But also, the thing is, when I say I was really doing the podcast for me, it was for me, and the more because my season 1 ended as the world was coming back open, and at that time I joined Buzzsprout, the Facebook community group. Then I had attended Podfest live virtually because it was again 2020. And then I got to meet different podcasters and asking questions. And so I am blessed that the podcasting world community is free of so many resources, especially from the people you meet as podcasters. And I hear this a lot, especially from people who come from movies or music. Like, y'all don't gatekeep compared to that side. Like, people are willing to share information when you connect with the right people. Don't be scared to ask. And I feel like the new podcasters are so lucky because there's ChatGPT right now. Like, back then, I literally had to look for communities and go to these people. But also right now, the podcast world is growing and there are always meetings and communities. But also as far as my workflow, so when I tell you, when I started again, because it was COVID, right? I had the time. So I didn't have a workflow because all I had was time. And then when my job started, when the world started opening up and I was called back to work and then now doing both, that's when the pressure and the burnout started coming. And I was like, I can't do this because I had never created a workflow. I was just used to doing it. But now I got to be at a certain place and come back in. So I had to pause and ask myself what works for me. So for me, I realized that seasonal worked best. So what I would do is, because I had just ended my season abruptly, but when I ended it, it was 15 episodes. So I was like, okay, we're going to do seasonals, 15 episodes. I was like, what will work best for me is during the time I take a break. Like, I'll have the episodes running, and then when the last episode airs, I'll take 2 months off. I'm just recording the episodes. I'm finding guests. I'm recording whenever I can, whatever. The second month, I'm editing them, prepping them, and then scheduling it. It doesn't always work the way because now I've become a pro that, especially when I'm doing solo episodes, I procrastinate until the last minute and then I'm running towards editing it. But because I'm doing it's my own and I know how to do everything last minute, I don't recommend it. But I don't recommend it, especially when, as podcasters, we know technical difficulties are part of our shit. There's one time I waited till last minute and then I recorded an episode. I didn't hit record, so I wasted all the time. There was a time it was muted, so I was talking, the video was there, but there was no sound, and these are episodes that needed to go out in 3 hours. So I don't recommend it. So what worked for me was that I would schedule them, I'd put them out, and that way when it's time for the episodes to be coming out, I'm just concentrating on promoting them and doing social media thing, because podcasters, what will drain you about being a podcast isn't showing up and talking. This part is fun. Like, if we could do this and everything else is handled, I could do I want to be a paid host.
All day.
But then when it comes to the editing, the promoting, because you're going to be a social media marketer, you're going to be the producer, you're going to be the booking, the scheduling the emails to go out. You have to be responsible for creating an email list, all that. So you do need a workflow that works for you. Mine was doing it seasonal, and I record them before, and then I promote as the episodes go. That's what works for me. There's some people who don't like doing seasonal. Kudos to those people who do throughout the year. When I was getting into podcasts and I was in a clubhouse room, and this lady literally wanted to fight me. She was like, you can't take breaks because your listeners are gonna forget you. And don't let people lie to you, because as long as you're being honest with your listeners, whenever I do my last episode of the season, I tell them, hey, and throughout the year, like once we're getting closer, I remind them. But they also know so much that 15 episodes and Paula is out until next season. So I normally tell them like, hey, by the way, the season is going to come to an end, or we're ending. Keep in touch with us on social medias, because we're still active on social media. We're just taking, and sometimes I will be doing lives on social media while I'm not dropping episodes. Like there's so many other ways. So you direct your listeners to a place where they can still get connected to you. And I always tell them, we're going to be back in 2 months, but look out for the newsletter. That's why the newsletter is important, because I also send updates on the newsletter as it goes. So the people will tell you don't take breaks are probably the ones who don't do much of the production. They just show up and talk. They have a team. If they have a team, don't listen to anybody who has a team, okay? And stop listening. Stop listening to all these gurus. Half of them don't know what they're talking about. Do what works for you. And I think we keep forgetting that, because if I say I'm going to follow Gabe's way, but Gabe's show is not the same as mine. So his way works for him because of how his show is structured. It won't work for me. Like, so don't compare. Figure out what works best for you, and have a great support, like mentorship. I've ended up picking up different people in the podcasting journey who I go through for different things and help. And one thing I learned, just because you're a team of one doesn't mean you're actually one. Throughout this podcasting journey, I've ended up with a jingle and a paid intro. And most of them I haven't paid for them, but they are well made. But because I also learned on using your connections and doing barter trade. So you have friends who are good at production and you are better at this. Give them your services for this, let them do this. When you do more of what you love and let other people handle what you don't love, you're going to continue enjoying what you're doing, and the consistency is going to be easier.
Absolutely. Take notes, listeners. She's hitting on every point that you should in the beginning. Not all of us have a deep wallet to say, I can go buy and build a $10,000 studio. I have my production guys over on Fiverr and Upwork doing all my work. That's the shit for down the road. This is for when you're starting, and it's hard. It's a hard grind. So you got to love what you're doing. The process of finding guests to come talk shit with you. So how do you do your outreach to other people who might be potential guests and invite them on, so that people who are listening might be able to say, okay, that'd be a good idea to do for myself? What works for Paula?
So one thing is, that was one of the biggest worries I was having when I started my podcast, thinking like, will I be able to get guests to come on my show? And now I turn away guests. It's ridiculous. So this is why my also system works, right? My workflow. So my podcast started as a safe space for me. So we were talking a lot about mental health, right? And then I remember you shared earlier about how people are not even advocates and talking about mental health. I used to bring therapists and in different varieties and different everything. And eventually when I went to a conference, people kept on telling me, you got to find your niche. And I hated that. I was like, I don't want to be closed in a box. I also realized mental health is so wide, and I only know I don't want to study mental health. I don't want to go that deep, but I also want to bring awareness to it because I am dealing with it. So I had to switch. That's when I switched to creativity and mental health, creativity journeys and mental health, where I wanted to give these creative people their flowers, but also be aware of mental health and learn from these people what they're going through with their mentor being in the creative space. Because we don't talk as much about that and all that. So most of the time, how I look for my guests is every season, I try to sit like, how do I want this season to be? Once I get the theme of that season, I literally use Instagram a lot to find people. And I don't like doing emails because I hate emails. They feel so insensitive. I feel like I have to be proper, and I hate nothing about me is so proper. So whenever I send them a DM on Instagram, I send a voice note instead of a message so that they can hear me, my personality. Because sometimes I am very sarcastic, so my messages can be off depending on who's reading it.
Right. All context.
If you don't know me, So when I send a voice note, I call them by their name. I do a little bit of research on them before I message them, and I be like, hey, I love your profile. I love everything you're doing. I'd love to have you on my podcast. And to be honest, I got lucky because of my podcast being Talk Shit with P. Everybody wants to talk shit with P. But I've also used dating apps. This is both looking for guests and promoting my podcast. If you're married, I don't recommend dating apps because please, I don't want your partners coming for me. But I was single and I was in these dating apps, and you find very interesting people on these apps, right? But Bumble used to have a place where you find friends or you find work. So when I saw Bumble had that, I decided even Tinder and Hinge can work both ways. So I'd put my podcast there, and then I would swipe through the people. And some people, their character would just be like, oh my God, I'd love you on my podcast. And I've gotten a few people who have been on my podcast, and when you ask them where we met, it was Tinder, not because I was interested in dating them. And sometimes I'd feel bad because I would swipe and they would accept, and then here I am like, oh my God, I'd love to have you as a guest on my podcast. And probably
Right.
But dating apps was one of them. But I got lucky with Podfest and with social Instagram. I barely have had guests from LinkedIn, and mostly also by going to conferences. So I go to a lot of podcasting conferences and meetups, and I meet people there, and also word of mouth. Some of the guests who have been on my show will tell other people, will introduce me to somebody they think might be a fit for my show. So yeah.
Love that. People listen, that's the work. That's the work. It is going to go find the avenues to find outreach for what's going to work for you. And I know that there's guest booking systems that people use. I'm going to have one on this show who created one. Mr. Alex and Filippo.
Yes, we love
yes, good people. I love it too. But again, it's not finding interesting people is sometimes digging under the right rocks to find individuals in certain areas. I've heard about other people going and digging on social media, I've never heard anyone say, I'm going to go find dating apps to go find my guests. And maybe that would be somewhere down that avenue, but going to go find a particular sect of individual or guest, again, it worked.
The show was going to run around. So there was the Valentine's love in the air. And I was like, if I'm having accidental swingers, I was like, Tinder has the most random dating type of people. I was like, there's so many, and for some reason couples always want me to be their third, so I felt bad matching on couples. They're thinking they're getting their third, and me, I'm like, can you come to my show and talk about how this works in your relationship? But it worked. And as much as I love Alex and I love Podmatch, but Podmatch, that's why I say you gotta look what works for you and your show, because Podmatch didn't do much for Talk Shit with P, because a lot of people in Podmatch were more professional in a way. Like my show, you really have to talk shit. I cast, we drink beers, like we have conversations with a connection. So everybody who has been on my show, I have to feel a connection or a vibe from you, and like you're really willing to bring it on my show. Relatable. So Podmatch didn't work for me, even though I love them and I'm always rocking with them, you know. But
right.
And that's nothing bad, but it just wasn't for my show. So I say, when you know your why for your show and why you're doing it, what you want for your show, don't let everybody cloud you, because everybody's going to give you advice about, oh, your show should be like this. Oh, you should do this. Oh, you should do this. No, what you want your show, because at the end of the day, you're the one doing it. Like, all these people are just going to talk.
But here's the thing, though. I don't want them to have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to do this. My goal is to, every time that we have a class that goes through, we're launching 20 or 30 new podcasts out into the world that they'll be able to maintain and sustain, not just doing the 6-episode drop off and then it just sits there and empty RSS feeds and no one knows what it's about. Why did they stop?
Send them the link to this podcast and be like, I liked your podcast and I think you should come back.
This is why I looked for people in the first sect that had figured out a way to find consistency, because that's a breakthrough. Mm-hmm. Whether you know it or not, Paula, that's a breakthrough for most podcasters. Much as they say it's flooded and saturated in the market, there's the people that break through and continue through. Those are the ones that you should look at and model after. Like, how did they figure it out? I want to be able to nurture all the ones that I bring in and continue to push them on. How do you distribute and promote your podcast so that you find an audience or you find a community that wants to rock with you, that wants to listen? How do you promote it? I know you mentioned most socials, but I'd still like to hear your thoughts, your insights.
All right. I think when I did my research, when I started, I think the lady who I went to her class, the Australian, Buzzsprout had a Facebook group. This was in 2020, and I think those are the only ones that I had heard about who were on Facebook with a community already. So I joined them. That same year, they ended up giving me a free ticket to Podfest virtually. And then throughout the year, like the next year when I went in person, they were there at Podfest. Because I was debating moving or sticking around, because I also had created an account in Anchor, but distributing in Anchor was, I think the process was harder. And then Buzzsprout had where I was just clicking buttons when I went to the distribution, and I was just clicking buttons and they were doing everything for me. I was like, oh, I kind of like this. So I left Anchor alone. I was using Anchor to record, and then I would upload it on Buzzsprout, and the customer service was amazing. But I love my Buzzsprout people. But I annoy them too much, and their customer service is always helpful. And what I liked about it is because I am a person who does seasonal. And again, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, right? So when I'm taking a break on season, I don't have to continue paying for the hosting. Like I go down to the $5 one, where instead of paying that $20 monthly I go to $5 for just housing. I don't have hours to put the episode, but I just house it for $5 a month. And that to me was where I was like, oh, I can keep dropping off when I'm coming back. I put it on. So I love that. Anywhere where the customer service is amazing, I'm going to hang around. So choose where you feel that works for you. Especially now we have so many. We have Libsyn. I wouldn't really recommend right now. They're doing some shifts and shuffles over there. What's going on? But I love Captivate, Podop. Yeah. Podops is one of mine, because now I'm working on a private podcast. So I've been looking at places where they have private ones, and Podops and Transformer is FM, I believe. Then my list where I'm doing research. But again, as I say, people these days, they ChatGPT. Like, ask ChatGPT the differences and see what you are looking for. Because again, depending on your budget, that's number one.
The big one.
Depending on how much you want to spend, and what they offer and what you're trying to get from there. So, but I am Team Buzzsprout, and I love them. And as far as promoting, right? We were talking about promoting, and I have like these are beer openers, and they're normally kitchens. Depending on where you are, you're talking, they might forget the name of your podcast, right? If you're drinking or hanging. So, but when they wake up and they find themselves with an opener or a sticker, and they're like, what the fuck is this? They're gonna go search you and find you. So I use a lot of that. And shout out to Matthew Pesci with his Connect Tap, where it's just a tap and all my details are there. So I just tell people, tap and see what it is. And I'm like, pull up your phone, pull up YouTube, or pull up Spotify. And I search myself, and I have self-promotion, baby. Like, if I'm talking to you, you're going to hear about my podcast, and I'll make you sign up for it, whether you listen or not. I hope you do listen. I have subscribed myself on you. Right. I do that a lot. But, the openers and stuff really help, because people remember, and they also end up checking you out.
Yes. And that's, again, you hit on a point that I think most podcasters don't probably realize until it's probably too late. You got to self-promote.
I used to hate talking about myself on my podcast, but I realized, how are people going to know? And these days at the airport, like, I have a backpack with my logo, I have hoodie. So people look at my backpack, they're like, is that you? Yeah, that's my podcast. And we start talking about it on the line. Wear your merch, talk about your podcast.
It feels icky to sometimes self-promote yourself, but it's a necessity. How else are you going to distribute and people? You could put a podcast out into the world and you're not going to find no traction because you don't spend the time to say, I'm going to go on Instagram and talk about it. If you want people to tune in, if you want downloads, if you want people to continuously come back,
you have to ask them. You have to tell them, please, at the end of listening to my podcast, will you head over to Apple, leave a review, go to Spotify, leave a review. There's nothing wrong with it. Because if it's good enough, people will.
And I want to tell the people who are scared to self-promote or whatever. I used to be the same. As soon as I started my podcast, I used to not want people to go listen because I'm sharing so many things. But these days, even on my dating apps, when people are like, tell me about yourself, I send them a link of my podcast. Go listen to this episode and then come back and talk. One time I was at Podfest and I was the host and we were waiting. It wasn't time yet for the next speaker. So in order to pass time, I was like, so who wants to come out on the stage and share about their podcast? And the way people were rushing to come up to share about their podcast, I was so shocked. I expected people to be a little bit shy or whatever. And after they shared, I asked them, when you ask us about our podcast, hell yeah, we're going to talk about our podcast. What do you mean? And I was like, I want to be like that. I want to be able to just rush and talk about my podcast. And now I can't shut up. I'm like, have you ever heard about Talk Shit with P? You should go listen to Talk Shit. You should find Talk Shit with P. And now even with my business, with everything, I'm like, if you don't talk about it, nobody else will. And even one time people kept on asking me, it was like, Paula, on your show, you're constantly telling us how broke you are and you're living paycheck to paycheck. Aren't you embarrassed about saying that? I'm like, hell no. How else am I going to get an opportunity or a job if I pretend like I'm all good? Closed mouths don't get fed. So I am going to tell you guys I'm looking for this opportunity. I am going to tell you guys. That when things are happening, people will remember, oh my God, you remember that show? Maybe they should come. Or you remember Paula, she was looking for this opportunity. But if you keep quiet, ain't nothing happening.
Ain't nothing happening. There you go. All right. Thank God you shared such a wealth of knowledge. Thank you, Paula, for taking the time again to do this.
Oh my God.
I love your style.
This is the best. Good luck. And thank you so much, Gabe. I'll see you soon.
If what Paula shared today landed for you, and I think it did, go find her. She is a Talk Shit with P everywhere. That's not a typo, and it's not a coincidence. Instagram, TikTok, Threads, same handle, all of them. And the show itself, Talk Shit with P, is on every major platform. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to this right now, go search it. 10 seasons of real conversation with creatives who showed up and told the truth. Start anywhere. You won't regret it. And while you're at it, if this show has been useful to you, leave a review for the Podcast About Podcasting on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Subscribe if you haven't. Tell one person. That's the whole CTA one person. You know exactly who needs to hear this. Links to Paula's show and socials are in the show notes. No excuses.
If you've been listening to this show, you already know the audio quality isn't an accident. Those intros and outros? Created with 11 Labs. And no, I didn't spend a fortune or waste hours in a studio to get there. 11 Labs gives you access to a massive catalog of professional-grade voices. Or you can clone your own. Either way, you get broadcast quality sound that makes your content feel legitimate from the first second. Right now, you can start a free trial and get 10,000 credits for just $11 a month. That's professional level audio production for less than 2 cups of coffee. Click the link in the show notes and start elevating your creative process today.